makes you so sick at heart that you can't take part. You can't even passively take part.
After the success of my recent Jimmy Dore videos, it's time for another one, another blast from the past from 2016, where Jimmy is going to enlighten us in one of his many areas of expertise, this being Brexit, and why, according to this video, it is actually good for working people. So here we have Jimmy, a supposed leftist, once again siding with the xenophobic reactionary currents that supported the Brexit vote in Britain. So let's watch.
I'm here with comedian Rod Placco. We're gonna go over this video that explains kind of all the stuff that's been going wrong, not only in England, but you can extrapolate it out to the.
Okay, one thing that really annoys me is when Americans refer to Britain as England. They're not the same. Okay, the country is Britain. England is one of the constituent nations of the United Kingdom, but it's not England. Okay.
The economy of Western democracies, especially in the United States. So Mark Blythe, this guy Mark Blythe, is that here he is. I'll show you who he is. That guy, Mark Blythe. He's a political scientist from Scotland, who's a professor at Brown University.
So, first I want to make the disclaimer. I like Mark Blythe. I think he's a good among the better left-wing economists. I strongly recommend people to listen to his many videos that are on YouTube. However, on his views on Brexit, I disagree with. I disagree with the leftist case for Brexit, which has often been called Lexit, because there are many things to criticize about the EU. There are definitely claims to be made that the EU, in more than one respect, is a neoliberal project, a free trade project, etc. But on the other hand, the EU also underpins a lot of the worker protections that the UK has. And perhaps if the UK was governed by a committed left-wing government, say Jeremy Corbyn, a left Brexit would have been good. Unfortunately, under the Tories, which has been the party most supportive of Brexit, aside from like the fringe far-right groups like UKIP or the Brexit Party, the Tories really want Brexit as an excuse to scrap regulation. And that includes scrap worker regulation. So there is no outcome from Brexit that is actually good for working people under a conservative government. And that's something that I don't think Jimmy Dore really understands. And I think that that's something that Mark Blythe really doesn't want to admit. So let's watch this. Also, Mark Blythe has subsequently appeared numerous times on the Jimmy Dore show, and one thing that's really funny about Jimmy Dore, well, not funny, I think it's one of the best examples of how Jimmy Dore tries to prime his audience, not by promoting the content of what people say, but the credentials of who people are. For that's more important to him than what people have to say. He constantly refers to the people that he likes. He gives them like lavish titles in his videos, and always introduces him with like all the recognition that they have. Whereas his opponents, he almost immediately smears them. Like he never says The Intercept, he says the billionaire funded Intercept. Things like that. And if you look at just a search on Google of on Brexit, so Jimmy Dore Brexit, you'll see numerous videos where Mark Blythe appears, and in almost all of them he describes him as economists who predicted Brexit and Trump. Economists who predicted Brexit and Trump. Economists who predicted Brexit and Trump. Do you see what he's doing there? Like he's immediately, like, it doesn't matter what he's going to say. The important thing is that he predicted Trump and Brexit. So that automatically makes anything that comes out of his mouth correct. And that's not true. That's absolutely not true. And like I said, I say this as someone who generally, I like Mark Blythe. I think he's good. But just because you predict Trump and Brexit, which I'm not even sure if he did. I haven't seen any video of him like saying that this would happen. But maybe he did. Let's just say that he did. Even then, that does not mean that anything that Mark Blythe says about any other topic is necessarily correct. But Jimmy Dore doesn't care about that. And Jimmy Dore's fans don't care about that. Anyway, back to the video.
And I don't know how I came across this video, but this guy starts talking sense, like everything I've been thinking about, and he's saying. So he has some great ideas about the euro. I'm going to play it. We'll stop and start it. Here's what he says right off the top. Now, this has everything to do with Brexit, okay? So
here's the thing. My side is I'm very pro-European, but I'm against the euro. So if I still lived in the United Kingdom, I would have an interesting choice. So if you look at Larry Elliott in The Guardian, Larry has said that he thinks he should vote for exit because this might be the existential crisis that blows up the euro. Now, why would you want to blow up the euro? Because that will be terrible, etc., etc. Because the long-run effect of the euro is going to be to drive Western European wages down to Eastern European levels in global competition for export share with the Chinese. That's one interpretation as to where this all goes. And that's going to be fine for the Eastern Europeans coming up. It's going to be great for very efficient exporters in the north. It's going to be an absolute disaster for France, parts of Italy, if not all of Italy, and certainly for Greece.
So I don't know if you understand what he's saying. What he's saying is there's some people saying that not only should we should blow up the euro. Why? Why do you want to get rid of the euro? And he's saying, well, what do you think is going to happen? So you have low-wage Eastern Europeans workers and higher-waged Western European workers. So what do you think is going to happen with one central governing economic body that doesn't give a shit about the workers? Do you think they're going to try and raise the wages of the Eastern Europeans, or they're going to try and bring them down so they can all compete with China?
Well, lovely conspiracy theory, but the facts show that actually none of that happened. So nothing of what Jimmy Dore just said, or what Mark Blythe just said. And note that Mark Blythe at least gave the disclaimer, like, this is one interpretation. So I don't know if he's fully committed to this idea, but the facts don't actually show this. This is the OECD real wage growth numbers from 2007 to 2019. So this was the last year, the last normal year before the global financial crisis and the subsequent euro crisis that affected Greece, Portugal, Italy, the so-called pigs. Does that look to you like, yeah, there we go. So you can see which are the countries at the top. And most of these, OECD and the EU, most EU countries are in the OECD. That's pretty high wage growth across the board. And the Eastern Europeans doing particularly well. And most of the continental European, the Western European countries still have pretty substantial wage growth during this time. Germany doing pretty well. Sweden, France, Denmark, UK not doing very well. But then the UK is not in the euro. And this is important for later. But all these countries, and especially the Eastern European countries, are doing quite well in terms of wage growth. So I'm afraid that reality just doesn't match with this conspiracy theory, that it's just a plot to keep wages low to compete with China. No, not at all. And then on top of that, if you look at China's wage growth is growing even more dramatically. So China is becoming less wage competitive year after year. So there's zero evidence. I repeat, zero factual evidence. Not that Jimmy Dore fans will care about this, because all they care about is conspiracy theories. All they care about is any kind of anti-establishment narrative that anyone can spout. That's all they care about. Facts don't matter. This chart doesn't matter. I'm sure they'll say in the comments of this video that this is some CIA, State Department funded chart. But this is reality, okay? So none of that is actually happening.
That's what's going to happen. So that's what he's saying. I'm not a fan that there's a great argument to be made for getting rid of the euro. Because now what they're going to try and do is try to suppress every worker's wage in the European Union so they can now compete with China. So it's this race to the bottom. And if you have sovereignty over your own economy as a country, you maybe have more control over that stuff. That's it.
For the record, I'm opposed to the euro. I'm not opposed to the EU, but I am opposed to the euro precisely because of what happened during the global financial crisis, and the inability of Euro countries to essentially depreciate their way out of a recession, and the treatment of countries like Germany towards countries like Greece. So, for the record, I am not a fan of the euro.
That's a pretty good idea. I like that idea, because what's been happening, and that's, I mean, look what they did, look what the European Union did to Greece. And he's just making the case that same shit's going to happen to Italy. They're going to happen. I'm telling you, this Brexit, not that bad of a thing for working people. So,
Jimmy, are you aware that Britain is not in the euro area? Are you aware that Britain, you probably aren't, because you don't even know the difference between England and Britain. Are you aware that the currency of the United Kingdom is the pound sterling? Did you even bother Googling that before you made this video? Probably not. Holy shit, what an idiot.
Let's go. There's more. He's got a lot more to say.
Now, if you have a system in which one side's running a surplus and the other side isn't allowed to run a deficit because of the rules, the only thing the other side can do is permanently contract their economies to allow someone else to make money selling BMWs. I don't see that ending well. So perhaps it's better to nip it in the bud when you've got the chance.
So he's saying, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm not an economist.
Clearly you're not. Clearly you're not.
But he's saying, you know, if there's a country inside the European Union running a surplus, well, another country isn't. So when you're in bad economic times, you run deficits. That's how you get out. That's what we did. You run deficits. You deficit spend. You stimulate your economy. Well, if you're all in this one big economic European Union, individual countries won't be allowed to do that stuff.
But you can do that. You have control of fiscal policy, regardless of whether you have a common currency. This has nothing to do with fiscal policy, and I'm actually surprised that Mark Blythe mentioned it, unless what he's referring to are the external accounts, which, of course, you wouldn't expect Jimmy Dore to know the difference. So the reason why a common currency like the euro is bad for countries that are in a recession is because when a country's in a recession, often the easiest way that you can get out of it is by depreciating your currency or devaluing your currency. Why does this help? Because when you devalue your currency, it makes your products more competitive globally. So you end up with a trade surplus, or you basically improve your trade position, and more money's coming in. And that makes up for the damage that is done because of the recession in terms of, you know, domestic demand. So you're basically compensating domestic demand with external demand, and this has been a successful way for countries to get out of recessions. I remember in Mexico, for example, when we had our very bad 1994-1995 crisis, the so-called tequila crisis, the devaluation helped. We had a massive trade surplus that year that helped offset the recession and helped the economy recover more quickly than it would any other way. So the problem with the common currency is that countries like Greece or Italy or Portugal, or the countries that were in crisis back then, can't do this because they don't have independent monetary policy. There is one central bank for the euro area, which is the European Central Bank. Yes, it is dominated by Germany informally. So there is a huge constriction in terms of your monetary policy options, but not fiscal policy, which I think is what Jimmy Dore is referring to, and he clearly has no fucking idea that, in fact, every single European country has an independent fiscal policy. And there are fiscal rules in the EU, so you're not supposed to go above a certain deficit, but these rules are generally not applied during a crisis. So, and often when countries violate that rule, nothing really happens, because there were times before the crisis that Germany and some of the other bigger countries exceeded their fiscal limits, so to speak, and nothing really happened to them. But I don't think no one in their right mind, and I don't recall, like, I was following this, the Euro crisis quite often, and I don't recall, like, Greece or Italy being, or any country during the financial crisis, to be punished because they were running deficits. The whole point of a fiscal rule, in fact, if in most countries, a fiscal rule exists so that you don't overspend during boom times, so that you can then overspend during crises. That's the whole point of a fiscal rule. So he's wrong. He's just basically wrong.
So the only way they can get out of bad economic times is to contract, meaning austerity, which, as we know, doesn't work and only hurts people. It only helps the banks, which is why they're okay with it. And he's saying that's a bad thing. I don't see that ending well, when individual countries inside of the European Union aren't allowed to run their own deficits. That's what he's saying, right, Ron? I'm not wrong.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I see like the kind of foresight that he has there, and that's sort of, I had not thought of it from that perspective before, but that does make a lot of sense. And as somebody that has a lot of family over in Italy, despite my ginger appearance, I do have a lot of family over in Italy. Placone is an Italian name. I kind of see that perspective, and that makes a lot of sense what he's saying.
Yeah, it makes a ton of sense, right? He's got more to say. Let's listen.
Now, the thing is with Brexit, I don't think that's what the debate's all about. This is Trumpism. Everybody's got a version of it. Trumpism. Remember Donald Trump?
Yeah.
Right, okay. So, well, here's what I mean by Trumpism. For the past 25 years, particularly the centre-left, has told the bottom 60% of the income distribution in the country the following story. Globalization is good for you. It's awesome. It's really great. And we're going to sign these trade agreements. Don't worry, there'll be compensation. It'll be fine. You'll all end up as computer programmers. It'll be fantastic, right? And by the way, we don't really care because we're all going to move to the middle because that's where the voters are, and they're the people with money, and they're the ones that we really care about. So you get the shift under Schroeder, you get the same thing under Blair to New Labour, whatever, and you make that move. And you basically take the bottom 30% of the income distribution and say, we don't care what happens to you.
And that is what's happened in the United States also. Neoliberals have turned their back on workers. They got in bed with Wall Street and corporations, just like the Republicans, and now we have things like NAFTA and the TPP deal.
And what does any of this have to do with Brexit or the EU? Like, zero. Every country is responsible to the ideological shift within its borders. It has nothing to do with the EU. I mean, Blair existed. Thatcher, by the way, who supported the EU, or Schroeder shift, whatever you want. This has nothing to do with the EU. You still have countries that, despite being in the EU, have very strong welfare states, that have very strong protections for workers, even well beyond what EU worker protection regulations establish. So this has zero to do with it. Again, this is just like piling. This is what Jimmy Dore loves, and this is what Jimmy Dore fans love. And again, this is the problem that sometimes people like Mark Blythe, who is, you know, smart, respectable, but often they're also so obsessed with the anti-establishment narrative that they just have to pop it in whenever they want, even when it has nothing to do with the topic that's actually being discussed.
No unions anymore. And we have the biggest income disparity since the Gilded Age. 50% of all wage earners in America earn less than $30,000. So that's the result of that. So it's happening there. It's happening here, too. So that's what he's pointing out.
Yeah, there's been heavy frustration with New Labor over there that I think really spiked a lot when Iraq happened. And then I think this is just all that coming to a total head.
So you mean when New Labor, so there's the Labor Party, which Jeremy Corbyn now is the head of, but he's a real lefty. Now, so that's Labor, but New Labor would be Blair. That would be like the Hillary Clinton wing of the party, right? So that would be the neoliberal. The New Labor would be neoliberalism, right? Yes. And then Jeremy Corbyn, he would be the Bernie Sanders, the real liberal.
Right. And yeah, when I said frustration, I was referring to the progressives over there.
So the progressives over there are you're saying, and because New Labor, Tony, but back the Iraq War,
right?
Which is, we're not supposed to be warmongers if you're a liberal. So that's
one of the rules.
Yeah. So you're talking about, so a lot of the people on the left got disaffected from their leadership in the Labor Party, the New Labor, starting with the Iraq War.
Big time. I think that was when it took a very big shift to the right that angered a lot of people. And it probably predated that too, but I think that was a big turning point. And then this was just another sharp turn that frustrated people further. That was the first thing I thought of when it all started going down.
Here, he's got more to say.
You're now something to be policed. You're now something to have your behaviors change. We're going to nudge you into better patterns, as the Americans like to say. It's a very paternalist, very patronizing relationship. This is no longer the warm embrace of social democracy, arm in arm with solidarity with the working classes. They're there to be policed and excluded in their housing estates so that you feel safe in your neighborhoods, so that you can have your private schools, they have their public schools.
Isn't this amazing? It's like exactly what's happened here.
It sounds oddly familiar.
It's oddly familiar. So there's the upper 10% has control of our economy and our government, and meaning our culture, and our complete society. They've screwed over everybody, all the workers, Keep working for less and less and less. You're getting, now if you want to go to college, that's the only way to get a decent living. Now, we're going to burden you with tens of thousands of dollars of debt just because you want to get an education and contribute to our so they're doing the same thing. The people over there, they're doing it here. And so now half the people in the country are ready to vote for Trump, and half of the Liberal Party are ready to not vote for Hillary Clinton. So there's...
I'm still waiting. Like, when is he actually going to give the argument for Brexit being good for working people? Like, you can understand the diagnosis of why people supported Brexit as an anti-establishment narrative, which I do believe in, for the same reason that a lot of people voted for Trump as an anti-establishment narrative, not because they were necessarily racist. At least in 2016. I do think people who voted for Trump in 2020 were mostly, the basket of deplorables. But I do think a lot of people, at least in 2020, you knew what he was about. Whereas in 2016, that could be, I do think if you voted for Trump for anti-establishment reasons, you had a case for it. And the same thing with Brexit. But that's not the point. This video is not a diagnosis of why people voted for Brexit. If it were, then I would not be criticizing it, because I do agree fundamentally with this narrative. My issue is, when on earth is he going to give the case that this is good for working people? Because here's the thing. In Jimmy Dore land, anything that is anti-establishment is good for working people. And that is incredibly, incredibly narrow-minded. Incredibly binary. But that's as far as his mental faculties will get him. And sadly, most of his fans are also quite limited in that respect. I hate to say it, but it's true. Like, there is no notion of accepting that Brexit was driven by anti-establishment sentiment. Yet, the outcome of Brexit could be very much worse for working people.
It's a big problem. It's over there, it's over here too. And guess what the elites are doing in both countries? Ignoring the problem again. You know why? Because they would have to take responsibility for it. They would have to change. And they would have to do things like a job program. And they'd have to regulate Wall Street. And they'd have to stop shit like TPP. And that ain't never going to happen. Because it's a one big gravy train, one party rule, and it's the money party. And this is amazing. This is mind-blowing, this guy's...
Also, what Jimmy Dore seems to completely forget is that Britain in 2016 had already been ruled by the Tories for 6 years. So this whole discussion about New Labour, etc., like, what's the point? Like, who is the establishment right now in Britain when he's making this video? And to this day, it's the Conservative Party. That's the establishment.
Saying this stuff.
Yeah, I do love the subtle sarcasm, by the way. Like earlier in the clip, we should point that out. They're like, Donald Trump, perhaps you've heard of him?
Perhaps
Yeah, I've heard of him. Yeah, heard the name.
Heard him.
You don't really want to pay taxes for anymore. So once this has evolved over 20 years, you have this revolt not just against Brexit. It's not about the EU. It's about the elites. It's about the 1%. It's about the fact that your parties that were meant to serve your interest have sold you down the river. Yeah, they're all the same. Think how ridiculous this is. Think of the Scottish independence thing, right? So these guys vote to stay in because the entire British establishment links arm in arm and says, don't do it. You've got to wonder why, because ultimately who's going to get hurt if they do it? People with money. So they're saying, don't do this, right? So, okay, they go, all right, then we won't do it, right? So then the SNP, the anti-austerity party, are in there like, well, we didn't win that, but, we're still in power, great, on you go. Okay, so what happens next? Well, if there's going to be a Brexit vote and to get out, then the Scots are going to vote to get back in. Okay, this is fun, right? So you're going to give up George Osborne, who's an austerity chancellor, for who? Dr. Schäuble. So your nice little Scottish welfare state's going to be really well protected by the tender embrace of the Germans.
Again, this is, I'm sorry, like I said, I like Mark Blythe. This is idiotic. This is idiotic. This is when you just need to spout an anti-establishment narrative for its own sake. First and foremost, there is no real reason why Scotland would necessarily adopt the euro. In theory, the euro is the official currency of the European Union, and supposedly joining the EU means in the longer run you have to adopt the euro. But many countries have successfully not done that, most notably Britain. But Britain isn't the only country that in the European Union that doesn't use the euro. So no guarantee that Scotland would would adopt the euro. Second point, welfare states still exist within the euro area. I don't understand why Mark Blythe is making this argument that Scotland joining the European Union would mean that it would lose its welfare state. There is nothing, absolutely no evidence that that would be the case. Zero. This is stupid. I'm sorry, this is stupid.
So what he's explaining is that Scotland had a vote recently whether to leave the UK or stay in the UK, and they voted to stay in the UK, right? So now there's a vote to stay in the European Union or leave it.
Yeah, Donald Trump had a few misunderstandings there, right? He got some heat on Twitter.
Yeah, and so all the party leaders said we should stay in the union because money, right? So now that England's voted to get out, they're saying, hey, maybe we should take another vote to get in. And so this guy's making the point, really? You want to have your economy ruled not by the people in London, but by the people in Brussels? That's what he said. So who do you think's going to give a shit more about? So it's a lose-lose for these guys. So this idea that Scotland's going to leave the UK and then join the European Union as some...
Scotland has no fiscal independence. Like, virtually, I mean, compared to what it would have as an independent nation, come on, give me a break. If it joined the euro... So, right now, Scotland does not have full fiscal independence and has zero monetary policy independence. If they joined the euro area, so if they joined the EU, they would have fiscal and monetary independence. And if they adopted the euro, they would still have fiscal independence, more than they do now, and no monetary independence, which they don't have now. So it would still be a condition of more independence, even if they joined the euro. Damn, this is mind-boggling intelligence here.
Kind of savior to their economy. He's saying that's a fool's errand. He goes, because who are you going to put in charge of your economy? The people who just screwed over Greece. They don't care about workers. Hey, I bet he even says that.
How's that working out for the Greeks? Right. People aren't thinking this one through. This is basically a revolt against technocracy. It is a revolt against governance by unrepresented, unelected, undemocratic elites. And having had a government where every single district in your country says no chance, 61% say no chance, and then the result is we're going to do it anyway, you're basically proving to people that democracy is irrelevant. So this is global Trumpism.
And at the end, it's a no-win scenario. I mean,
well, it's a no-win scenario until basically elites figure out that at the end of the day, as I like to say to my American hedge fund friends, the Hamptons is not a defensible position. The Hamptons are a very rich area on Long Island that lie on low-lying beaches. Very hard to defend a low-lying beach. Eventually, people will come for you.
I love that. Eventually, people will come for you. That's my horrible Scottish accent. But I love that idea that eventually people will, and it's starting to happen. And that's why people are like, oh, those people, they're so crazy in the EU. They would vote to screw over their economy. No, they're voting against unelected people running their lives.
What unelected people running their lives? The UK is not part of the euro. Please understand that fucking point, Jimmy. It's not hard. When people are asked, like, what EU law you want to get rid of thanks to Brexit? What's the EU law that you're most eager to get rid of? No one can answer that fucking question. No Brexiteer can answer that question, because let's be honest, Brussels does not rule Britain, or rather, Brussels did not govern Britain. It doesn't. This is mind-bogglingly stupid. This is when your brain can only operate on anti-establishment mode and can't think beyond that. That's what fucking infuriates me about Jimmy Dore and his fans. That there is no nuance. Jesus Christ. I mean, and honestly, like, this is probably the worst video from Mark Blythe that I've seen. Most of the others are much better. Yeah, this is just absolutely terrible analysis. And like I said, if this was merely a video of the diagnostic of Brexit, that'd be partly fine. But I'm still waiting for the moment when Jimmy is going to enlighten us, or Mark is going to enlighten us on why Brexit is good for working people. We still haven't gone to that point. And I should add, in the 5 years since this video was made, the Hamptons remain uninvaded.
That's what that is. And by the way, now all the MPs in the Labour Party voted to get rid of Jeremy Corbyn. And Jeremy Corbyn ain't going anywhere because he said, you guys didn't elect me, the people elected me. Again, it's all this and democracy is a real pain in the ass to elites and on both sides of the pond. Democracy really pisses them off because look at what happened with Brexit. And now they're saying they're trying to find a way to not do Brexit. Could there be a bigger thumb in the eye of democracy or voting of the will of the people? They just voted to get out.
Yeah.
Here's Jimmy Dore, the Brexiteer, now joining the same ranks as UKIP, the Brexit party, almost every libertarian or right-wing think tank. Yeah, Jimmy Dore always chooses the right side of history.
It's I enjoy his summary too. I mean, besides, as you kind of hinted to, having an absolutely lovely voice that makes me want to revisit every episode of Game of Thrones. He put it in a way, sometimes you hear, you said he's an economist, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes you hear economists speak and it's reduced, everything's just reduced to widgets and they pretend as if greed isn't a thing. But when you actually unpack something the way this guy did, you see the full picture and you see, okay, these are the issues we're dealing with. These are the factors involved. And then here's the peek under the hood as to what it really is, which is an undemocratic thing fueled by the elites,
and he offered no economic analysis whatsoever. I mean, this was fundamentally a political analysis, and like I said, it's not incorrect in terms of explaining the diagnostic over Brexit. But he still gave no economic argument. He still gave no argument on why Brexit is good for working people. None, unless you simply think, "Fuck you" to the establishment. That automatically improves your standard of living, your well-being, your GDP per capita. This is absolutely magical stupidity.
we pointed out, sounds eerily familiar.
Sounds eerily familiar. Eerily familiar. So there you go. So that's what's really happening. That's what's really going on. That's what's really in people's minds and hearts. And we've explained it before in other videos on this channel that it's an economic insecurity and being lied to by your leaders on every party, by the elites in your culture, that makes people vulnerable to demagogues who peddle racism. That's what does it.
So, how is Brexit working for working people, Jimmy? Not very well. Not very well. And under a Tory government, which you conveniently forgot is in power in Britain and remains in power, it will never be good, because the Tories will never use Brexit as a force for good. None at all. And finally, I know I talk a lot about how stupid Jimmy Dore is, and I know that Jimmy Dore's fans insist that he is some kind of political genius, a god among men. And here's another video that I'm going to show, just a very small bit, to demonstrate the extent of Jimmy Dore's knowledge about Britain. So enjoy, because I did.
Now, I will admit that I'm a dumb guy. I'm a C student, and I didn't go to the best colleges. I got my degree from more of an art college. Columbia College at the time was big on arts. And I don't really know the difference between England, the UK, and the Britain. I know what the UK is. That's the United Kingdom, so that includes...
By the way, note the dates of these videos. So this is November. And this one is July of that same year. So he's had some time to do his research if he was really that interested in the topic. And clearly he hasn't.
Ireland and Scotland, right? The UK?
I want to say not Ireland.
Not Ireland, but
yeah.
Scotland.
Yeah.
That's right, not Ireland.
Yeah.
But see, this is too confusing to a dumb guy like me. But what is Britain? Great Britain. So there's Great Britain, England, and then the UK.
See, I thought, geez, I'm not sure.
Right,
I got to start playing over there more, so I learn this stuff.
No,
there's also something called Wales.
Oh, then there's Wales.
Everybody forgets about Wales.
That's right.
Yeah.
I know, and that's where you get a lot of dog food.
Yeah.
From Wales.
I think they're just the last countries that Britain, that are going to kick Britain out.
Yeah.
Because they conquered the whole world, starting with their neighbors. So
Yeah, you're right.
Does that make any sense?
Yeah.
So it's just the island where the English assholes all still live. I'm part English. I'm allowed to say that.
No, we have a lot of listeners over. I say across the pond because I don't know what the difference between Britain, UK, and England is.
There you go, people. there is your political genius in action, knows absolutely nothing about the countries that he covers. Just essentially takes whatever anti-establishment narrative he can find and automatically make it sound like it's a good thing, and doesn't realize the massive harm that Brexit will have for working people. And again, this is where Jimmy Dore's kind of totalitarian worldview just does not accept any kind of dissent, in the sense that you can have a situation where you can have an institution that has many flaws, and you can even hate, like the EU. I personally I'm not a huge fan of the EU, to be honest. I think it's moderately better for it to exist than it not to exist. I think certain aspects of the EU are incredibly undemocratic. They have pushed numerous votes that they've ended up failing, and then they've ended up doing it, whatever they were voting on. They did it anyway, despite the wishes of voters. The euro is a terrible idea. I'm an economist. I can give economic arguments of why the euro is a terrible idea. But still, it has a lot of things going for it. And there is no room in Jimmy Dore land for this notion that you can have an institution that has many flaws, many flaws, and discarding this institution just because it represents the establishment, just because it represents the elites. Discarding this institution could actually be worse for working people, which is what Brexit will be. It already is, and it's going to be worse. But again, I don't expect Jimmy Dore to ever understand this. I don't expect Jimmy Dore fans to understand it. In fact, I expect Jimmy Dore fans to swarm to this video and ratio it and write in all their comments how Jimmy was right about this, despite the fact that he wasn't. Because Jimmy Dore isn't a pundit. Jimmy Dore is a cult. And in cults, there is no space for free thinking. So, enjoy this video. Please like, please share. More importantly, please subscribe. Please throw all your hate in the comments. But guess what? This will not be the last Jimmy Dore video that I do. In fact, I'm going to make more of them on a regular basis, just because I love annoying Jimmy Dore fans. And if I can convince at least a few of them to realize just what an absolute charlatan this man is, the absolute cancer of the online left, there's no other way to describe him. A cancer. Because sadly he metastasizes and he infects all these other communities that get swayed by the loudness of his views, not the actual content of them. So hopefully a few of you will see the light. Until then, like I said, please like, please share, please subscribe, and yeah, there will be way more Jimmy Dore bashing, I guarantee you.